Tina Issa's last night began like something ordinary, the kind of quiet Monday evening that wouldn't stand out on a police blotter. She came home to the small apartment in South St. Louis still wearing her Wendy's uniform, proud that she had finished her first shift at a job she had gotten on her own. She was 16, tired, hungry, and happy. Her boyfriend had walked her to the door. Inside, behind those walls, her parents were waiting, and above them, hidden in a vent, an FBI recorder captured every word. By 1989, Palestina Tina Issa lived between two worlds that no longer fit together. She had been born in Brazil to a Palestinian father, Zain al-Abidin Hassan Issa, and a Brazilian mother, Maria. After years of moving, the family settled in Missouri. In St. Louis, Zain ran a corner grocery. Tina went to Roosevelt High School, learned English, and picked up American pop culture fast. She listened to hip-hop and R&B, worked on her accent, and talked about studying aeronautical engineering so she could become a pilot. Inside the apartment, though, her father clung to a stricter world. He saw himself as the head of a traditional household. He expected his daughters to obey, to marry men he chose, to work for the family, not a fast food chain. To him, Tina's music, clothes, friendships, and especially her relationship with a 20-year-old African-American boyfriend named Cliff Walker, were proof she was slipping away. He believed she had stained the family's honor and talked about it so often that his other daughters grew afraid of what he might do. What Zain did not know at first was that federal agents were already listening. The FBI had put his apartment under surveillance because of his ties to the Abu Nidal organization, a militant group suspected of plotting attacks. Agents heard him complain that his youngest daughter had become too American. They heard him say she had shamed him. They heard him talk about killing her. The first time they recorded it, they logged it as a threat, ugly but probably empty. In the months before her death, Tina's life at home turned into a pattern of confrontation and escape. Friends remembered her being pulled out of school dances and forced home. Her parents hated her job at Wendy's. They accused her of using it as a cover to go out with her boyfriend. Tina told friends she felt trapped, that her father was watching everything she did, and that he had threatened her more than once. She said she loved her family, but did not want to live by rules that treated her as a bargaining chip for a future arranged marriage. On the night of November 6, 1989, she walked back into that apartment still wearing her uniform, thinking about homework and school and maybe a quick phone call to Cliff. The tape reel was already turning. The agents who normally monitored it were not there. They were off duty. Only the machine was listening. What happened next lasted minutes. The argument started with her job. Zain accused her of lying, of sneaking around with her boyfriend, of disgracing him. Tina pushed back. She had worked her shift, like any other American teenager, and she was proud of it. The shouting escalated. Neighbors later said they were used to hearing raised voices from the Issa apartment, but no one called the police that night. On the recording, Zain's voice grew colder and more deliberate. He told Tina she had shamed the family. He said she had to die. As he moved toward her, Tina realized what was happening and began to plead. She cried out for her mother, screamed that she was only 16, begged them to stop. Maria did not step between them. Instead, she grabbed their daughter and held her down. Zain went to the kitchen and came back with a boning knife, the kind he used in the store. On the tape, Tina could be heard gasping and struggling as her father stabbed her again and again in the chest. One blow pierced a lung, another struck her liver, others tore through her heart. She cried out that she was dying. At one point she shouted that she loved her mother. The reply, flat and final, was that it was too late. The FBI's equipment recorded the attack, but no one at the monitors heard it in real time. Somewhere else in St. Louis, agents went about their night, unaware that a case that had started as a terrorism investigation had just captured a murder. By the time officers reached the Issa apartment, Tina lay on the floor bleeding out. Zane told them that his daughter had come at him with a knife, that he had acted in self-defense. It looked, at first glance, like a chaotic family fight that had gone too far. Paramedics rushed Tina to the hospital, but the wounds were too deep. She died shortly afterward, never seeing another school day, never sitting in a college class, never finding out if she would really become a pilot. Then the FBI brought in the tape. When agents checked the recordings the next day, they heard everything. The argument, the threats, the screams, and the stabbing. The audio shredded Zane's claim of self-defense. It also exposed Maria's role. You could hear her restraining Tina, hear her answering her daughter's pleas. For the local prosecutor, Assistant Circuit Attorney D. Joyce Hayes, the tape was more than evidence. It was a map of the crime unfolding from the first insult to the last breath. The murder case moved forward in state court. At trial, the jury heard the tape. Reporters later wrote about how jurors flinched when Tina's voice came through the speakers, begging for her life. The defense tried to argue that Zane had been provoked, that Tina had attacked him with a meat cleaver, and that he had only defended himself. The recording told a different story. There was no sound of an attack from her. There was only a father who had decided that his daughter's independence was an insult that had to be answered with a knife. The state called witnesses from Tina's school and community to talk about the life she had tried to build. Friends described a girl who liked music, joked about boys, and talked about flying planes, living in a home ruled by strict rules, sudden rages, and a father obsessed with how the community saw his family. To the jury, the killing no longer looked like a moment of madness. It looked like the end of a long attempt to break a daughter who refused to give up her own identity. In October 1991, Zane and Maria Issa were both convicted of first-degree murder. The jury deliberated less than 4 hours before reaching its verdict. In December of that year, the same jury recommended the death penalty for both parents. When the judge handed down the sentences, he addressed the argument that this had been some kind of cultural misunderstanding. Culture, he said, was no excuse for murder. In prison, Zane never faced execution. He died in 1997 from complications related to diabetes while still on death row. Maria's sentence was later reduced to life without parole. She remained behind bars in Missouri until her death in 2014. Tina was buried in Sacred Heart Cemetery in Florissant, Missouri. Her mother chose to dress her in a bridal gown, following a Brazilian custom for unmarried women who die young. At the graveside, FBI agents watched from a distance as the family and members of the local Palestinian community lowered the casket. Her boyfriend was not told about the funeral. In the years that followed, Tina's story resurfaced in court opinions, in a true crime book called Guarding the Secrets, and in a television episode of Forensic Files. It was often called an honor killing. For classmates who visited her grave, it was simpler than that. Tina Issa had been a 16-year-old who wanted to live her own life. For that, she died on her own living room floor, with a tape recorder as the only witness that would not lie. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.